Yuichi is a broke, pathetic loser who couldn't even afford a Happy Meal until his entire class got kidnapped by a freaky doll and thrown into a game. Now he's stuck with a 20 million yen debt, a bunch of fake friends hiding secrets, and the power to either expose the traitor or watch them all get wrecked. But before any of this, Yuichi works hard every day delivering newspapers to random houses for his part-time job to save up money for the school trip, which costs 70,000 yen. The next day at school, Yuichi's rich friend Makoto mentions that his dad could have just given him the money since he comes from Elon Musk's bloodline. But Shiho, who is a class president of Yuichi, doesn't like this and tells Makoto it sounds arrogant. Before they can start arguing, Tenji the goat steps in to calm everyone down and prevent things from getting worse. In the end, they all smile and tell Yuichi that they're proud of how hard he's working. Sometime later, their class teacher announces that the 2 million yen for the school trip has been stolen. Beside him, Shiho and Makoto are standing with their ugly faces. Shiho explains that she was the one who kept the money in her locker, but now it's completely gone. Then she says that if the person who took it is in the room, they should come forward and admit it. After hearing that, the whole class wonders if Shiho is thinking that someone in the class is the thief. The next day, Shiho and Makoto don't come to school and their friends think that they might be the one who stole and ran away for honeymoon. That night, Yuichi gets back home tired and finds a letter from Shiho. In the letter, she writes that there's something important she wants to tell him and that she'll be waiting for him at the school gate at midnight. However, Yuichi runs to the school gate and is surprised to see all of his friends already there waiting. But instead of explaining, Shiho starts scolding him for being late, saying he was the one who called everyone there. Then she hands him a letter, claiming that it came from him. Yuichi quickly figures out that something is wrong and they've all been tricked. But before he can do anything about it, someone suddenly hits him with a taser and he gets knocked out. Afterward, Yuichi and his friends wake up together in a plain white room with no windows. Suddenly, a strange doll with a big smile walks into the room and says hello to everyone. Yutori looks at the doll and realizes it's Manabu, a character from an old adult film where it steals people's plot. The doll tells them that they will be playing a simple game with him. He explains that every time they finish a game, they will earn 2 million yen. If they keep winning, they'll be able to pay off the 20 million yen debt that's been placed on them. But Yuichi freaks out at him, asking where the debt came from. However, Manabu explains that one of them owns that debt. Still, Tenji questions Manabu, asking if he's saying one of them owes a 20 million yen debt and whether winning would erase it. He also argues that kidnapping them is illegal, no matter the excuse. However, Manabu responds by reminding them they willingly joined and even paid the 2 million yen fee. At that moment, Yuichi figures out that someone in their group must have taken the school trip money to cover the costs. Furthermore, Tenji then asks what will happen if they don't play, and Manabu explains he will release them but won't return the entry fee. The person in debt will have to return the money himself, but if they play, they can split the debt of 4 million each. If they lose, the debt won't increase, but each will be stuck with the remaining on their individual debt. Manabu then gives them 5 minutes to decide what they want to do. When Yuichi starts talking about the debt, Shiho quickly stops him and says they shouldn't focus on who owes them money. She explains that the person in debt was just looking for a way out and wanted help from their friends, not blame. However, Manabu turns to Yuichi and asks if he really wants to know what the debt is for, just so he can figure out who not to trust. He questions if the money means more to Yuichi than his friends. After that, Manabu leads them to the first game, which takes place in a classroom. There, he gives each person a tag with their name on it and explains that on the back of each tag, it shows how much money that person owes. However, they can't show the numbers on their tags or the amount will double, but they can talk about it. The first game is Kakuri, where they place their fingers on a 10 yen coin to move it to the correct answer. Manabu asks Kakuri to reveal the answer and the coin moves to yes. He then tells Yutori to try no and the coin moves there, explaining that Kakuri favors the minority if answers differ. Then, they can't talk to each other while the game is going on, but if they mess up, the person who has the biggest debt will have to take on everyone else's debt too. After that, the game begins and Makoto reads the first question, which asks what the tallest mountain in Japan is. Everyone smiles and thinks it's going to be an easy question, but then the coin points to no. Seeing that, Shiho almost loses it, but Tenji and Yuichi gives her a ChoCo behind her back so she cannot break the rule. After that, Shiho reads the second question, which asks if 1 + 1 = 2. Yuichi thinks it's another easy one, but just like before, the coin moves to no. This time, Yuichi starts to feel like something isn't right and he begins to wonder if someone in the group is a traitor. He remembers how not long ago, Makoto had a bruise and said it happened because he tried to do something unholy with Shiho, but she hit him. It's finally Yuichi's turn, but when he opens the envelope, he sees there's no question inside, so he figures out that he must come up with a question on his own. Then he notices something else. The coin will move to yes to clear the game, but if it moves to no, the reader's debt will be cut in half. Yuichi starts to believe that his friends picked easy questions and gave wrong answers on purpose just to reduce their own debt. Seeing Yuichi's face, Maria thinks he no longer trusts his friends. Tsukino says people only hold on when they see others doing the same. Yuichi thinks about choosing yes, which would end the game and cut 400k yen from his debt, but then wonders if he should say no instead. He remembers Yutori telling him that her old bullies still bother her sometimes. Yuichi reads the next question, asking if there are 7 days in a week. He thinks about Yutori, the 5th reader, and chooses yes, but the coin still points to no. He starts to wonder if someone is trying to push all the debt onto Yutori. After that, Maria and Tsukino realize Yuichi has figured it out and notices the 5th question doesn't have any rules written on it. Yutori reads the 5th question, which asks if they will be friends forever. Tsukino points out that if this had been the first question, everyone would have said yes without thinking, but now they're all starting to doubt each other. Maria gets excited, thinking that Group C will be out in the first round. But before the vote happens, Yuichi suddenly acts a little weird and asks if anyone knows what color plot Shiho is wearing today. After that, Yuichi glances at Makoto and asks if he wants to know, then points out that Shiho's face is turning red. However, he understands nobody will speak up because admitting anything would double the debt they've struggled to reduce. Yuichi figures out that someone is trying to force all the debt onto Yutori, but since he just spoke up, his own debt has now been doubled as well. However, if the game ends immediately, the traitor would lose the most. Yuichi's card claims the penalty would shift to whoever has the smallest debt. Maria looks stunned, but Tsukino accuses him of bluffing, even though the others might fall for it. Yuichi then admits he was only joking, insisting there's no traitor and they should keep playing. He quickly adds that the answer to the 5th question is yes, but when he gives a serious look, Yukino sees it as a final warning. He's telling everyone to say yes or the traitor will be the one to lose everything. However, the coin moves to yes and they clear the game. But Yuichi tries to figure out how to identify the traitor and asks the group about their remaining debts. Tenji responds that his should match everyone else's at 3.6 million. The others grow concerned about Yuichi's debt, but he clarifies that his is also 3.6 million. He had previously reduced it by half before it got doubled again. Yuichi points out that their answers didn't match, probably because they're nervous, but he asks them to trust each other in the second game. Afterward, Manabu calls everyone to begin the second game, but Yuichi says he needs to tie his shoelace and hangs back for a moment. He starts to think they might not all have the same debt, so he quickly checks their question cards. But as he looks, he notices that parts of the text are fading. Maria and Yukino realize he figured it out and explain that the cards were written in special ink that disappear after a while, hiding the conditions that were originally written on each card. In addition, Shiho joins Yuichi and shares that she also believes there is a traitor. She asks him who he thinks it might be. However, Yuichi admits that he suspects her, remembering what she said before the game, how she didn't need to look for whose debt it was because Shiho would never forgive the person who stole the school trip money. Hearing that, Shiho apologizes, explaining that she had believed Yuichi was the one who stole the money. But Yuichi gets angry, thinking it's because he's a poor guy who sells her plot on OnlyFans. However, Shiho surprises him by revealing that her suspicion wasn't about that, it's because she has a huge crush on a freak like him. Moreover, she no longer believes he stole the money and confesses that her debt isn't 3.6 million but actually 7.6 million. Unfortunately, Shiho believes that when she almost yelled, she made a small noise which ended up doubling her debt. She then assures Yuichi that she won't betray him and will believe him no matter what. Meanwhile, Yukino comments that while Yuichi is sharp when money is involved, that alone won't win the game. It turns out, Tenji had been eavesdropping on Yuichi and Shiho like a third wheel. Afterwards, they head up to the school's roof, where Manabu looks like a geezer. He says that they've all been keeping secrets from each other and today, they'll be revealing them. Manabu decides to explain the rules more clearly. They enter a room where they have 3 minutes to write down bad things about each other. Afterward, Manabu collects the papers, reads each negative comment aloud. The first person to reach the goal will suffer a huge loss, and when at least one person reaches the goal, the game will end, with each player receiving 400k yen. Anyone who is still in the game will get an additional 1 million yen in debt. If everyone turns in blank cards, there will be no God survey, and everyone will move just one space. The first period begins and everyone turns in blank cards, so they all move one space forward. They land on a square that says anyone who steps on it loses 100k yen. Yuichi quickly realizes there are 60 spaces in total, and if they step on every single one, that would add up to an extra 6 million yen in debt. In the second round, all the cards are blank again, but this time the square they land on takes 500k yen from each of them. Manabu then announces that all the debt collected during the game will be given to the person who reaches the goal first. During the third round, one of the cards isn't blank and it says that Shiho likes Yuichi but used to date Tenji. The gods choose Shiho's card as the most unforgivable, so she moves 5 spaces while everyone else moves just 1. But Shiho lands on a square that takes another 500k yen from her, while the others land on a space that neither adds nor takes away money. However, Makoto starts to wonder why Yuichi looks so calm, since he didn't know that Shiho liked him, because Makoto likes Shiho too. He starts to feel like maybe they were making fun of him. Nonetheless, Tenji tries to calm Makoto down, saying he understands Shiho really well, but Shiho explains that she and Tenji are childhood friends because her dad is a cop and his dad is a prosecutor. At one point, their families decided that she and Tenji should get married, so the two of them pretended to be a couple in front of their parents. That continued until Tenji's dad passed away 2 years ago and Tenji ended up transferring schools. Makoto calls it a lie and Manabu steps in, saying it would be a lie only if there were no real feelings involved. However, Shiho confirms there were no feelings on her side, but Tenji admits he did have feelings, and still does, which is why he always gets angry when Makoto treats Shiho carelessly. However, Makoto says Tenji should have told him how he felt, and if he had, Makoto wouldn't have gone after Shiho. But Tenji says he couldn't, because he already knows that Shiho likes Yuichi. Makoto then asks why Tenji wrote the card, since only the two of them knew about the past. Tenji says he didn't write it, because if he did, he would have been the first one people blame. He thinks Makoto probably wrote it after hearing some rumors and wanted to see if they were true. Before they start fighting, Yuichi steps in and calms everyone down. After that, Yutori walks over to Shiho and tells her that all the boys end up liking her, and she's sure Yuichi will fall for her too. In round 4, Manabu reads that Makoto bathed with his mom until junior high while Yuichi didn't bathe for a week once and Shiho got plastic surgery for her crooked nose. The gods vote Shiho first, Yuichi second and Makoto third. After that, Manabu says Yutori did compensated dating back in junior high and then Yutori starts crying, asking Shiho why she wrote that since she was the only one who knew. Makoto then speaks up, saying that must mean she sold her plot to older men and adds that for someone who's not a sealed biscuit, she sure looks innocent. After hearing that, Tenji gets mad and punches Makoto, telling him to shut up. Then he turns to Yuichi and asks him to take care of Yutori, but Yuichi has no idea what he's supposed to do. Later, the gods vote Yutori in first place and everyone else in fifth, so she moves 5 spaces while the others move only 1. He reminds them that once someone reaches the goal, the game ends, but that person will take on everyone's debt. In addition, Yutori tells Yuichi that she really needed the money, and the bullying she's facing now is nothing compared to what she went through in junior high. Needing money, she ended up going on a paid date with an adult man, but after seeing his plus-sized dish, she ran away. However, Manabu doesn't believe her story, but Yutori insists it's true. She says she's still a sealed biscuit and doesn't want Yuichi to abandon her. Later, Yuichi tells Yutori that it doesn't matter if he believes her or not, but no matter her past, he won't abandon her. He then whispers that he wants to check her plot color, which makes everyone else think it's a love confession. However, Tsukino notes how Yuichi didn't seem troubled by her past and forgave her so quickly, suggesting he must already know about her flaws. At the same time, Tenji questions whether Shiho was aware of Yutori's situation. Shiho admits she knew something was wrong but didn't understand the full story. She explains that shortly after starting high school, she once saw Yutori surrounded by students from another school, hinting at something suspicious going on. She beat them up and took Yutori, but one of the boys told her that Yutori isn't worth protecting and will do anything for money. Worried, she asked Yutori and she revealed she did compensated dating. Shiho didn't want to dig deeper and promised she will never tell anyone. Seeing everything, Tsukino figures that there must be someone trying to destroy their friendship, and that might be why that person started the Tomodachi game. But Maria guesses that Makoto is the most suspicious since he doesn't need the money and is jealous of the bond between Shiho and Yuichi. The second most suspicious person is Tenji, who knew that Shiho liked Yuichi and also knew about her plastic surgery. Moreover, Tsukino says there must be someone even more suspicious. After thinking about it, Maria realizes it's Shiho, who knew all the secrets so far and could even badmouth herself. Earlier, during independent study time, after collecting the money, Shiho asks the others if they got their trip fee too. But no one responds, and even when she raises her voice and yells at them, they keep ignoring her. Then, a student comes up and tells her that another teacher is calling her to the media room. Since that's in the opposite direction of where she's supposed to turn in the money, she decides to lock the envelopes in her locker for now. The mysterious person walks toward the locker but accidentally bumps into Yutori, making her drop all her stuff. As the papers scatter, Yutori quickly tries to explain, saying she's been drawing manga and dreams of becoming a pro artist one day. While she talks and picks up her things, the person quietly grabs the money. Yutori then notices her pen left a small scratch under the person's eye, but the person just says it's no big deal and no one will even notice. Back in the present, Tenji watches Makoto looking excited with an ugly look on his face and wonders if he lost interest in Shiho after hearing about her plastic surgery. He then says that Shiho really did have surgery, but it wasn't to change her looks as it was to fix a scar on her face she got back in junior high. But Tenji goes on to reveal that he knows all of Shiho's secrets because he's been secretly watching her. He even knows where she hides her spare locker key. He once gave her an anti-theft alarm keychain, but it actually had a hidden mic inside. Thanks to that, he's been able to listen in on all her private conversations, including the one where she used to let older men grab her footballs in her basement. Shiho tells Tenji that he has a small cut under his eye and tells him to take off his glasses. Tenji is planning to ruin all of Shiho's relationships with the others. He wants to make everyone turn against her, so she ends up all alone. Once that happens and she has no one else left to trust, he wants to get in bed with her. Later, Tenji starts wondering if Shiho might be behind all the rumors, except for two specific ones about Makoto and Yuichi bathing together. He figures those two probably spread nasty stories about each other on purpose, trying to make Shiho lose her top ranking so it wouldn't look like she was always winning at everything. But since Tenji still believes in Shiho, she starts to wonder who could have written the one about Yutori. Tenji tells her not to go digging for someone to blame or else their group will never be able to fix their friendship. However, Tenji is ready for that question because Yutori's feelings for Shiho are already ruined, and now he just needs to break Shiho's feelings for Yutori. He then whispers that what if Yutori was the one who badmouthed herself? When Shiho looks surprised, Tenji quickly explains that Yutori probably likes Yuichi, and because of the bad-mouthing, she's gotten very close to him. She now realizes that Shiho has feelings for Yuichi and knows she wouldn't stand a chance if she went up against Shiho. So now she thinks Yutori bad-mouthed herself on purpose to get sympathy from Yuichi and made it seem like Shiho was the one to blame. Meanwhile, Manabu tells the lovebirds to stop wasting time with their gossip and focus on the game, so Yuichi tells Tenji to go in first. While inside the room, Tenji thinks hard about what he could write to ruin Shiho and Yutori's relationship. But then he remembers he has the lowest points and doing something like that might make everyone suspicious of him. So, he decides it's safer to write something about himself instead. When he comes out of the room, he sees Yuichi slapping Shiho because she called Yutori Diddy's side chick. Moreover, Shiho says that when a woman really wants something, she's willing to play dirty to get it. Yutori agrees with her, saying it's just like how some people get plastic surgery to make themselves prettier. Watching them, Tenji suddenly starts laughing, but then Shiho reveals that her plastic surgery wasn't to look prettier, but to cover up a scar she got from getting her buns smashed. Shiho says she doesn't care if Yutori believes her or not, but warns that if Yutori keeps coming at her like this, she'll stop trusting her completely. Tenji walks up to Shiho and quietly tells her that no matter what happens, he'll always trust her and starts acting like a simp he is. After that, the others take turns going into the room to write their bad mouth messages. Later, Manabu gathers the bad mouth notes and says there are two this time, which makes Tenji curious about what the other one could be. Manabu reads the first one out loud, saying that Shiho usually wears men's boxers. As soon as she hears it, Shiho quickly blames Yutori and Tenji starts to think this might be Yutori's way of getting revenge. Then, Manabu reads the second note, which says that Tenji is lying about his age. However, Yuichi turns to Tenji and asks if it's true, and Tenji admits that he's not exactly lying. He's just 1 year older than the rest of them. Back in high school, Tenji struggled with personal issues that forced him to take a year off. Now, he mentions that only he and Shiho should have known about this, since they've been friends since childhood. Shiho panics and immediately denies ever telling anyone. Tenji says he trusts her but warns that the group is slowly turning against her, leaving her more and more alone. When the votes are counted, Shiho receives the most, with Tenji coming in second. As they move spaces, Shiho steps on a space that allows her to nominate anyone, and the Tomodachi game made their own investigation and will reveal a bad mouth for one of them. In addition, the gods will vote if it's forgivable or not, and depending on the amount of unforgivable votes, the person will move from 0 to 10 spaces. Tenji starts to worry, because if Shiho picks him, everyone may learn that he stole the money and applied for Tomodachi game. Manabu then wonders if she will vote for Yutori to get back at her or for Makoto, who is in last place. It turns out, Shiho prepares to pick Tenji, but Makoto, who is always going to be second choice, steps up, wanting her to choose him. He has been thinking for a while and had said some mean things, but wants to remain friends with everyone. Tenji realizes that after he learned she didn't do plastic surgery to get prettier, he is trying to get her back. But Makoto speaks up, saying he has nothing to hide, and Shiho decides to side with him. Right after that, Manabu reveals a set of pictures showing Makoto's father. In the photos, it's clear that his father had clapped his secretary, taken bribes, and even recently spent money to cover up a scandal. However, Shiho tells Makoto that it's his father, not him, and that she doesn't hold anything against him. But Tenji quickly jumps in, telling her to stay away from him. He then turns to Makoto and asks if he truly hasn't done anything wrong. Tenji suggests that it's not normal for someone to volunteer to be voted in, and questions if perhaps Makoto's father used his money to cover up something for him. In the end, Tenji succeeds in persuading the group to avoid Makoto. But when the gods cast their votes, they declare him 99% unforgivable, forcing Makoto to retreat 10 spaces. Seeing Makoto now completely isolated, Tenji considers whether he should eliminate him in the upcoming round. Then Manabu reveals there's only one bad mouth rumor this time, targeting Makoto, and says it's so disgusting it makes him want to throw up. Manabu reads the bad mouth aloud, exposing Makoto as someone who killed a person. Tenji is shocked. He knows he didn't write that accusation. Scanning the room, he catches Yuichi grinning maliciously and immediately understands he's the one who fabricated the rumor. Watching this unfold, Tsukino realizes Yuichi isn't foolish at all. He's actually clever enough that he might emerge victorious in this twisted game. After that, Tenji gets furious, feeling like he has every right to take everything from Shiho, her trust, her friends, and even her smile. Then, Manabu the Joker turns to Makoto and asks if he really killed a person, but Makoto quickly denies it. Meanwhile, Tenji thinks to himself that no matter what Makoto's dad did, Makoto hasn't killed anyone. He's sure this bad mouth came from Yuichi and starts wondering if Yuichi has some kind of plan behind it. Makoto grabs Manabu and says it's a lie and the person who wrote it will get a penalty. But Manabu asks Makoto if he can prove it's a lie, but Makoto doesn't know how and tells him to find from a record. But Manabu asks if his dad covered up the crime. Manabu then turns to the gods, letting them vote to decide if they believe Makoto or not. Makoto tries to explain to the gods he is innocent and that when he got in trouble, his father always helped him out. However, the gods don't believe Makoto and vote 99% against him, making him gain 5 more spaces and take the lead. Yuichi approaches Makoto and tells him that he believes him and that this is proof that one of them is a traitor and is trying to destroy their friendship. Not only that, but Yuichi suddenly speaks up, claiming that he's already figured out who the traitor is. He blames this person for all the bad mouth messages and says there's no point in them arguing with each other anymore, since only one person is truly guilty. Yuichi then adds that he won't reveal the traitor just yet because he's thought of a strategy to win the game. Hearing that, Tenjin and the others get shocked, wondering what kind of strategy is he thinking about. Afterward, Yuichi comes to a conclusion and remembers that during the 6th period, Yutori's debt increased by 200k. He also recalls how Manabu mentioned that this game is based on normal Sugoroku, and in regular Sugoroku, there are both positive and negative spaces, which is what keeping the game fair and fun. Furthermore, Yuichi explains that the big problem with this game is that no one knows who wrote what. So, from now on he suggests a new rule, except for the person in first place. Everyone else will write bad mouths about themselves only. That way, if one person doesn't have a bad mouth, it'll prove they're the traitor. The group agrees to this plan, but Tenji doesn't like it. He wants Yuichi to just say who the traitor is right now and have everyone vote for that person. However, Yuichi refuses, saying he doesn't want to do that because it would leave the traitor alone to face the 3rd game, which he thinks is too cruel. Right then, Tenji freaks out, raising his voice and telling Yuichi that if they waste time on this plan and it doesn't work, he wants Yuichi to name the traitor. After some time, the 8th period begins, and Yuichi expects there to be only 4 bad mouth cards. But when Manabu shows up, he announces there are actually 10. And says he's disappointed in Yuichi. Manabu explains that if everyone could only write 1 card, Yuichi's plan might have worked. But since they're allowed to write as many as they want, someone ended up putting in way more bad mouths than the others. Nonetheless, Tenji says he saw this coming and demands that Yuichi name the traitor right now. But Yuichi apologizes, admitting he was bluffing the whole time and never actually knew if there was a traitor. Right after, Tenji pulls Shiho close and convinces her to stay by his side. Inside, he feels like he's finally won and will be able to get his revenge on her. After all, he waited so long for vengeance. By the 19th round, Shiho is 1 space from winning and Maria thinks the game will end like every other bad mouth Sugoroku. Moreover, Tsukino agrees, feeling Yuichi's tricks weren't enough to beat the traitor, but something seems off. She rewinds the video, spots something strange and realizes Yuichi is up to something. Even so, Yuichi suddenly acts strange and says he has a plan to force the traitor to reveal themselves. But Tenji refuses to listen and Yuichi points out that, no matter what, they can't stop Shiho from winning if she takes her turn. Makoto wonders why Yuichi wants to figure out the traitor now, but Yuichi explains that one of the rules says there's a penalty for lying. He also says that, with his earlier strategy of bad-mouthing themselves, everyone except the traitor can move on to the next game. For the final bad mouth votes, Yuichi writes everyone's name on 5 cards and asks them to write the same thing, which will only be true for the traitor. Moreover, Tenji asks how he is going to prove the lies and Yuichi tells everyone to write that they are the one who applied to play the Tomodachi game. Yuichi believes the traitor picked the game to break their friendship, so the person who applied and the traitor must be the same. If they all write the same thing, only the traitor will tell the truth and avoid the penalty. With the penalty, everyone else will have to go in front of Shiho and reach the goal. Tenji wonders how he will prove the lie, but Yuichi tells him there's no need to prove anything, as the management should already know who applied for the game. Yuichi then asks Tenji to go first. Inside the box, Tenji wonders what to say but then decides to claim that he was forced to apply for the game. Afterwards, Manabu says that there is just one card and the rest are all blank. He reads the bad mouth, which is Tenji stating he applied for the game. But Tenji wonders why he's the only one who wrote that, but Yuichi tells him that he had a plan to make the traitor expose themselves. Tenji tries to cry to gain sympathy, but Yuichi isn't fooled. Yuichi grabs Tenji, gives him a fierce look and asks him if he applied for the game. Afterward, Yuichi reveals that he had a plan from the beginning to set traps and expose the traitor, even before the second game began. He then explains that after the third round and the bad mouth about Shiho dating Tenji, he and Shiho secretly decided to team up without anyone else knowing. They carried out the plan without saying much, with Yuichi giving Shiho instructions through the cards. Tsukino confirms that this was Yuichi's first trap and she tells Maria to rewatch the footage from the fourth round, where they can see that Yuichi took 2 cards and had a pen, but when he came out, he told Shiho he had put a blank card. Tenji then realizes that while tapping Shiho on the shoulder, he handed her a card with instructions, which she read once inside the box. Moreover, Tenji asks Shiho how Yuichi could trust Shiho so easily, and Yuichi admits that he didn't trust her at first, but he tested her. His first instruction was for Shiho to use a secret Yuichi had told her about him, that once he didn't take a bath for a week. Since Shiho wrote that bad mouth, Yuichi realized that the other bad mouths must have been written by the traitor, not by her. Yuichi then decided to test Yutori, and in the 5th period, he gave her a card, telling her that Shiho was on their side and that she must continue pretending to fight her. He also instructed her to submit a secret about Shiho that only Yutori knew in the next period. During the 6th period, Yutori revealed that Shiho wears men's boxers. However, since there was another big expose, Yuichi realized that one must have come from the traitor, clearing Yutori of suspicion. The bad mouth revealed that Tenji lies about his age, which only he or Makoto could have written. Tenji wonders how Yuichi kept informing Shiho while staying close to her, but then he realizes it happened when he slapped Shiho. Tsukino explains that this was the second trap, and while it might not have mattered normally, Yuichi controlled the order in which people went into voting. With the special opportunity, Yuichi knew it would be too risky for the traitor to volunteer, so when Makoto volunteered, it cleared him as well, and this left Tenji as the traitor. Tenji realizes that the fight between Shiho and Yutori is part of his plan, and Yuichi confirms it. Yuichi explains that while he knew the plan wasn't perfect, he noticed that when he said their debt wouldn't increase, Tenji didn't back down. This makes Yuichi realize that Tenji isn't betraying them for money, but for something else entirely. Since they still need to finish the game, Yuichi knows that exposing Tenji could make him lose control and say even worse things. At the end of the game, Yuichi asks Tenji to go first, then tells everyone else to put down blank cards. Tenji thinks this doesn't make sense because everyone could write more than one bad thing, and he feels that his method of elimination shouldn't work this way. But then Tsukino says that this was actually Yuichi's third trap. Yuichi confirms it and explains that he also asked them to show proof of their friendship. When Tenji looks at the group, he notices that their nameplates are missing. Since none of them were the traitors, they gave up their nameplates without hesitation. Maria is surprised and impressed that Yuichi figured out giving away a nameplate doesn't double the debt like everyone thought. Even so, Tsukino guesses that Yuichi must have tested it earlier, since before the 4th period, he didn't have his nameplate. He probably gave it to Shiho and then took it back later. In a way, by doing that, he showed them that if they didn't give him their nameplates, he wouldn't trust them. Not wanting to be left out or pushed away, they all agreed to give theirs. Nonetheless, Tenji questions why Yuichi left him for last, wondering if he made some critical mistake that marked him as the most suspicious. But Yuichi explains that he knows the group too well. Tenji's unusual behavior during the game raised red flags. The Tenji he remembers is intelligent and level-headed, always the one to mediate conflicts. Yet when the game began, Tenji aggressively confronted Makoto and accused him of spreading bad-mouth rumors, even though Makoto couldn't possibly know their secrets since they never shared any with him in the first place. However, the others also agree they never share secrets with Makoto because he can't keep his mouth shut just like a brown ant. Yuichi suspects Makoto even wrote a bad-mouth rumor about himself, claiming he bathed with his mother just to protect Shiho. Yuichi further says that when Yutori's secret got exposed, Makoto was trying to comfort her, but his clumsy wording made it sound wrong. Yuichi knew Makoto couldn't maintain the deception for long, so he only explained the full plan during the final period while Tenji was present in the room. But Tenji realizes that it's indeed suspicious when he tried to blame Makoto, who obviously couldn't pull all that. After everything happens, Manabu says the game still isn't finished yet. He explains that even though they figured out who the traitor is, Shiho is still going to lose. Then, Yuichi walks over to Manabu and quietly whispers something. Seeing that, Tsukino and Maria look surprised and quickly go to check if what he said is true. After they investigate it, they come back and tell Manabu that it really is true. Then Manabu announces that the game is now over and Yuichi is the only one who made it to the end by himself. Then, Yuichi says he knows they're probably wondering why Tenji did what he did, but instead of asking him, they should talk to Tenji themselves while Yuichi plays the third game on his own. He tells them they can decide for themselves if Tenji deserves to be forgiven or not. Yuichi also shares that he's done some really terrible things in the past. Moreover, he says that he once wrote a bad mouth saying that Makoto killed someone, but that wasn't true at all. The truth is, he is actually the one who killed a person. But Manabu says the third game is super tough and nearly impossible to beat alone, warning Yuichi he'll regret trying to act like a hero. But Yuichi just wonders who'll end up regretting it more. Nonetheless, Manabu says Yuichi is terrifying and tells the others that he's a murderer who killed 3 people. They ask if it happened in some kind of accident, but Manabu says no. In addition, Makoto starts to turn against Yuichi, but Tenji steps in and says that sometimes people have to do things they can't explain, and someone like Makoto, who's had an easy life, wouldn't be able to understand that kind of pain. While his friends argue, Yuichi says that if he has to listen to all this noise, he's better off without friends. He says they're just holding him back and adding him to his debt. However, Manabu tells the group to say something supportive to Yuichi since he's heading into a brutal third game, but no one speaks up. Manabu then says it's no surprise. Nobody wants to be friends with a killer. Yuichi gets ready to jump into the game by himself, but Tenji stops him. But Tenji turns to Manabu and says that he also told a lie. The bad mouth about him dating Shiho wasn't true. He then admits that he wanted to ruin their friendship so he could have someone all to himself. However, Maria says he's just making things up, but Tenji says he's serious and wants to prove it. Then, he walks over and makes out with Yuichi and jumps down with him into the game. Tsukino watches and says she thinks Tenji must still have some kind of goal, since this is his second time playing the Tomodachi game. In a flashback to Yuichi's hospital stay, he's busy counting his money when Yuka interrupts him. She tells him there's something far more valuable than money, friends. Confused, Yuichi questions what she means by friends, but Yuka quickly corrects him, insisting he should call her mother now. Later outside, he meets his new father, who asks him about life's most important thing, but Yuichi answers money. In the present moment, Yuichi and Tenji regain consciousness inside a dark cave where Manabu announces they must remain there for 3 days to prepare for the upcoming third game. Yuichi immediately spots their limited supplies. Just a single water bottle to last the entire 3-day period. However, Tenji confesses that his earlier kiss was purely strategic. He only did it so he could touch Yuichi's gadget and finally explain his reasons for betraying their group of friends. Moreover, Tenji reveals this is actually his second time playing the Tomodachi game and quickly signals Yuichi to conceal his name tag. He blames Shiho for everything, claiming she stole what mattered most to him. The story flashes back to their junior high days when Tenji had 2 best friends. He'd saved up 1 million yen and together with his friends' contributions, they planned to start a business. But everything changed when Shiho transferred to their school and gradually came between them. From that point on, keeping track of their money became difficult because his friends directly asked if he and Shiho were dating. But Tenji clarified it was just their parents pushing them together. The trio struggled to maintain their finances, eventually pooling together 3 million yen. One day, one friend proposed dividing the money 3 ways. Each would invest their share separately. Whoever turned their million into the biggest profit would become the company's CEO and earn the right to devour Shiho's rice cakes. That fateful day, they were suddenly kidnapped and forced into the Tomodachi game, where they discovered one of them had secretly accumulated a 10 million yen debt. During the third game's brutal finale, Tenji ended up as the only femboy clown with the entire 20 million yen debt. But since he was still underage, Manabu delivered a chilling alternative. Instead of money, they would take the equivalent value from his very life, 20 million yen worth of his future. After being released 2 days later with strict orders to never speak about the game, Tenji immediately confronted his friend about the betrayal. His friend coldly admitted to spending all their money on Shiho. Soon after, both friends transferred to school. When Shiho noticed Tenji's depressed mood and realized he'd been talking to one of them, she nervously asked if their conversation had been about her, completely unaware of the financial ruin and emotional devastation she'd accidentally caused. Tenji eventually confessed everything about the Tomodachi game to his father, who immediately went to confront Shiho about the situation. But shortly after their meeting, his father was discovered dead and the officer reports that he did it himself. Determined to uncover the truth, Tenji began secretly investigating Shiho's possible involvement. That's when he received an ominous anonymous message warning that he would disappear too if he didn't stop digging into the matter. However, Tenji made a desperate gamble. He would use another Tomodachi game to trap Shiho and force her to reveal her true nature. But Yoichi suddenly realizes he accidentally ruined Tenji's carefully laid plans. But Tenji shakes his head, saying he didn't ruin anything. Moreover, Tenji tells the group that their current total debt is 10.8 million yen, which shocks Yoichi. But Yoichi is also confused about how Tenji knows the exact amount, so Tenji explains that after completing the second game, the management shares the full debt with everyone. Tenji then moves his hand away from his name tag and asks Manabu to confirm their debt once more. Nonetheless, Manabu repeats that Group C's total debt is indeed 10.8 million yen. Yoichi does the math and realizes their debt should have been 18.8 million, meaning someone wasn't honest about their debt. The group figures that Makoto likely received the same deal and is now at 200,000 yen in debt. Even so, their total debt should still be 14.8 million. Shiho's debt was originally 6.2 million, but if she avoided the penalty for speaking, it would drop to 2.2 million, making the total 10.8 million yen, which matches what they were told. Yoichi questions why Tenji chose to side with him, and Tenji explains it's because Yoichi had declared his intention to ruin the Tomodachi game. But Tenji's biggest motivation is getting revenge for his father, and he believes both the Tomodachi game and Shiho are connected to what happened. To prove he's telling the truth, Tenji flips over his name tag, showing Yoichi his real debt, 2.1 million yen, which then jumps to 4.2 million as punishment for exposing it. He insists he wants to stick with Yoichi, even if that means being used as nothing more than a pawn. But Yoichi says they still have 3 days left before making any choices, and he'll think about Tenji's offer. Almost 60 hours later, Yoichi asks Tenji what friendship means to him. Tenji says he doesn't care about friends anymore because his own friends turned on him. Still, Yoichi wonders if Makoto and Yutori really mean nothing to him now. Tenji says they're just strangers, but Yoichi doesn't believe it, because if that were true, Tenji wouldn't have picked them to be in the Tomodachi game with him from the start. Yoichi demands that Tenji apologize to them, even if they never forgive him. In return, Yoichi makes a deal. If Tenji keeps that promise, he'll also promise to win the third game. Once the 3 days end, Yoichi and Tenji are released into a forest, where they meet Sergeant Manabu. At the control center, Rieko Tamai visits Tsukino to inform her that the third game is beginning and that their teams will face each other. Rieko, seeing that Group C only has 2 members left, says her team is sure to win since larger teams have the advantage in this game. But Tsukino isn't convinced and suggests they place a bet on the outcome, which Rieko agrees to. Manabu then announces the third game is called Friendly Hide and Seek and explains that it will be a competitive battle between teams. Group C will face off against Group K, and the losing team will be eliminated. Members of Group K, noticing they're up against only 2 people, assume it'll be an easy win. However, Tenji believed that the Tomodachi game was meant to test the strength of friendships within each group. Manabu confirmed this idea, saying that friendship is tested because there are always opponents to challenge it. He then explained the game rules. Each team has to choose one person to be the hider, who will hide somewhere in the forest, while the rest of the players act as seekers, trying to find them. As Manabu goes over the rules, Tenji notices an option called Switch Teams. Manabu explains that a seeker has the choice to join the enemy team. But if the team they switch to wins, they pass their debt to the losing side and get to move on. However, if they switch teams and win, they won't get to continue to the 4th game. With only 2 players on Group C, Manabu adds that if one of them chooses to switch, the game will instantly end. Yoichi asks what happens if someone switches teams but their original team wins. Manabu explains that the traitor gets debt equal to the losing team's average and returns to their team for the next game. He also says name tags can't be traded this round. Then, Manabu reveals a solo player reached the 3rd game and asks if they want to add her. Tenji is ready to decline, but once Yoichi hears it's a girl, he agrees to let her join. Tenji says they shouldn't trust the new player, but Yoichi replies that winning with just 2 people is nearly impossible. Then, Maria appears and Rieko, watching from the control room, notes that Yoichi once threatened to destroy the game, so the higher-ups sent Maria to monitor him. She thought Yoichi might be complex, but letting Maria in so easily made her doubt it. Rieko then says there's another way to win besides trusting your team, having charisma. She adds that Group K has someone like that, a freak, and Tsukino will soon see who it is. Tsukino isn't sure a genius can beat someone like Yoichi, whom she calls a monster. Kadokura tells Yoichi and Tenji that he'll be the one hiding and they won't stand a chance, since he never gives up. But Tenji says he'll be the hider instead, since he can't ask Yoichi to sit out and they can't trust Maria, who might quit at any time. After that, Both teams are given 2 hours to prepare and hide. Tenji, Yuichi, and Maria search for a safe hiding spot while reviewing the rules Manabu had explained earlier. In addition, violence cannot be used to force the opposing team to reveal the hider's location. And once the hider chooses a spot, they must stay there until the game ends. Moving them or breaking any rules means an automatic loss, doubling each member's debt. Manabu then lists what they can do, distributing iPhone 16 Pro Max to everyone and explaining they can call anyone in the game, ally or enemy. Yuichi warns Tenji he'll only contact him in an emergency. As they continue, Tenji struggles with dizziness because of not eating for 3 straight days. They remember Manabu's instructions. Food is available in the center of the forest once the game begins, and they can eat freely, but they must bring supplies back to their hider. Manabu also provided a surrender button to the hiders, explaining that if they grow too lonely or exhausted to continue, pressing it would make their team lose instantly, though only the hider could use it. After searching, Yuichi and Maria settle on a small cave to hide Tenji. To avoid suspicion, Yuichi leaves Maria at a distance before guiding Tenji into the cramped hiding spot. But Tenji worries whether their small group can actually win against the larger opposing team, and Yuichi admits victory seems unlikely if they follow the rules. However, he hints that cheating might be their only path to success, though everything depends on Tenji's endurance. Determined, Tenji vows not to surrender, seeing Yuichi as his final chance to get revenge for his father. As the 2-hour hiding period nears its end, Yuichi abruptly leaves without sharing his strategy, leaving Tenji in the dark about what comes next. Nonetheless, Tenji stays hidden in a cave for 2 days without hearing anything from Yuichi. He starts to wonder why Yuichi hasn't returned, but since the enemy team hasn't found him either, he figures the game might be dragging on much longer than expected. With no food brought to him, Tenji begins to question if Yuichi has betrayed him, though the delay still doesn't fully make sense. He wonders if this is Yuichi's way of punishing him for betraying him before and feels close to giving up but eventually decides to keep going. Tenji tries calling Yuichi, but there's no answer. Later, Yuichi calls back and Tenji picks up, only to hear someone from the other team, who claims that Yuichi plans to leave him behind. The man also tells Tenji that Yuichi hasn't been looking for anyone and has just been spending time with the girl, grabbing cakes and eating out. He adds that Yuichi said Tenji messed everything up in the second game and that he'll never forgive him. When the man offers to hand the phone to Yuichi, Tenji thinks for a moment and says it's not necessary. If Yuichi wants to talk, he will, and until then, Tenji will keep trusting and waiting for him. The man warns that when Tenji gives up, he should press the button or he'll die. After the call ends, Hayakutaru asks Kei how Tenji is doing. Kei says he tried to act confident, but he sounded like a wreck and they feel bad for him, knowing there's no chance he can win since Juzu's strategy is flawless. Just before the third game begins, Juzu explains the plan he came up with to win. He says this isn't a game based on luck, but a real test of friendship. Juzu points out that Manabu mentioned they'll be playing in a vast forest, which made him question just how large the area is. The group quickly realizes the forest is huge, and whether a team has 2 or 4 members, it would still be almost impossible to locate someone hiding. Juzu then reminds them of the key detail, that seekers must bring food to the hiders, which changes everything. The rest of the group quickly understands the implication, except Hayakutaru, who remains confused. Kei considers whether they need to immediately station someone at the food supply, and when Juzu agrees, Kei admits he isn't quick enough for that task. Juzu instructs Hayakutaru and Chisato to sprint to the food station while Kei and Banri search for a hiding spot. Observing their coordination, Ryuko remarks that her group benefits from having a genius leader and flawless teamwork. Tsukino acknowledges their unity but clarifies they aren't ordinary friends. They function more like a disciplined unit. Ryuko reveals they're teammates from a basketball squad. Confident in their advantage, she declares Group K will win the game within 3 days. On the third day of the game, Tsukino double-checks with Ryuko if she's certain the game will end today. Ryuko confidently agrees, studying Tenji's expression as she explains their strategy. But she points out that tracking the enemy searchers when they deliver food is their best bet. After all, randomly searching the entire forest would be almost hopeless. With Group K having 4 searchers, they can always keep 2 members always tailing an opponent. And since they're all trained athletes, she adds with confidence, outrunning them won't be simple for the other teams. However, Ryuko explains their winning strategy further. If their searchers simply refuse to move, the hidden player will eventually surrender from starvation and dehydration, even if Group C tries to follow Group K's food deliveries. Their 2 members can't possibly track all 3 opposing searchers at once. To make matters worse, Tenji enters the game with a severe disadvantage, having gone without food for 3 straight days beforehand. With these factors combined, Ryuko concludes it's only a matter of time before Group C admits defeat and loses the game. As the third day draws to a close, Tenji suddenly sees Yuichi approaching with food, a sight that shocks Ryuko when she notices who he's talking to. But Tsukino suggests Tenji must be hallucinating from extreme hunger and exhaustion. However, Ryuko finds Yuichi's behavior suspicious, rather than attempting to deliver food or even call to encourage Tenji. He's spent the entire game camped out at the food station. What's more puzzling is how freely he's been sharing information about his own team members with others. However, Ryuko also questions Maria's strange behavior, even though she's supposed to be just an observer. She's currently acting like a full member of Group C, but Tsukino reveals that Maria sent her a single report, warning that Yuichi is even more unpredictable than she originally believed. Meanwhile, in a shocking twist, Yuichi suddenly makes his move. He openly declares his intention to switch sides and join Group K instead. Afterward, Ryuko struggles to believe Yuichi's sudden offer to switch teams, convinced he must be lying. But Tsukino points out this move actually fits Yuichi's style. He'd absolutely betray his group if it helped him win. She tests Ryuko's reaction, asking if she'd really accept a traitor. Ryuko immediately agrees, realizing this would guarantee their victory. Tsukino observes that everything now hinges on their decision. Whether they accept Yuichi's betrayal will determine how the entire game unfolds. However, Yuichi announces to Group K that he wants to switch sides specifically to make Tenji suffer more for his past betrayal. He explains the rules. Team switches can only happen at the central food station and just one member's approval is needed. However, the switch is permanent, no going back afterward. While most of Group K quickly agrees, K hesitates, pointing out they've always let their captain make final decision. When they pause to call him, Yuichi suddenly bursts into laughter. He apologizes but can't help mocking how they can't even decide something this simple without their leader's permission. Nonetheless, Yuichi continues taunting them, questioning what kind of controlling leader they have who makes all their decisions. This provokes Hayakutaru, who angrily defends his captain and tries to throw a punch at Yuichi, but his teammates quickly restrain him. As Kei leaves to consult their captain, Ryuko feels relieved they avoided a violent incident that could have ended the game prematurely, though Tsukino quietly suspects the confrontation might not have been accidental. When Kei returns, he delivers their captain's final verdict. Yuichi's request to switch teams is denied, but Ryuko seems taken aback by the decision, but Tsukino nods in agreement, convinced it's the right call. Juzu remains confident in his strategy, assuring his teammates they'll win regardless. He urges them to keep faith in his plan and stay the course. Earlier, Juzu had instructed Kei that if Yuichi kept pushing to switch sides, they should demand Maria join him. That way neither could scheme against them. He suspects Yuichi might use the switch to secretly reveal Tenji's location to his allies. Meanwhile, Maria quietly observes to herself that Juzu's plan is painfully obvious. But what he doesn't realize is that even this development still plays right into Yuichi's carefully laid scheme. 2 days back, just a few hours into the game, Maria questions Yuichi about their next move. But Yuichi calmly tells her they won't act for 2 days, making it seem like he doesn't plan to fight at all. Then, on day 3, he intends to suggest switching sides, and if the switch works, he'll find out where the others are hiding and share that information with Maria. However, Yuichi believes there's only a small chance, about 1 in 10, that the plan will work. He suspects the other team has already realized the best way to find the hider is to follow them when they deliver food. In a normal game of hide and seek, the smallest person would usually hide, but since they chose the biggest guy instead, Yuichi thinks they've figured out this isn't a regular game. They likely picked someone who can stay patient and endure a long, drawn-out battle. Even so, Maria asks what Yuichi will do if the other team refuses to switch. But before answering, he makes her promise complete loyalty to him. Once she agrees, he reveals his strategy and Maria finally understands why he had questioned if she was a girl earlier, before allowing her to join his team. But Yuichi tells Group K he changed his mind and don't want to switch. They wonder if it's because their captain saw through his plan, but he denies it, stating that after watching them, he now believes they will win easily. On the morning of the 4th day, Kei and Banri head out to deliver food to their captain. Chisato goes to keep an eye on Maria, while Hayakutaru stays behind with Yuichi. Yuichi asks if he's been playing basketball for a long time. He compliments their group, saying they work well together and that their captain, Juzu, is impressive and really sharp. Hayakutaru is happy that Yuichi finally recognizes that. He then shares that he used to mess up a lot with bad shots, and Juzu even got injured because of him, so he worked hard to improve, all to help make his captain stand out. Yuichi tells Hayakutaru that he seems like a wholesome, honest guy, but then questions how someone like him ended up in the Tomodachi game and wonders which member of their team is actually in debt. Just then, Chisato returns and tells Hayakutaru they'll switch places. He'll go check on Maria instead. Hayakutaru heads over, but when he arrives, he sees that Maria is missing. He starts searching for her and eventually finds her washing herself. Realizing how bad it looks, He panics and assumes he'll be known as a freaky King Kong and runs back to the camp screaming in embarrassment. However, Chisato starts getting curious about Maria and decides to go check on her, but Hyakutaru quickly stops him, warning that doing so would just make him look like a freak who touches women. Suddenly, Yuichi shouts toward Maria, claiming that he's found it. He grabs a bag and takes off running, and Chisato tells Hyakutaru to chase after Yuichi while he goes after Maria. As the two give chase, Yuichi and Maria eventually regroup and end up back together. As they run alongside a cliff, Chisato realizes that when Yuichi shouted "found," it was likely a signal to create confusion and split them up. However, Yuichi confirms that was exactly his plan and what he found wasn't important, it was just a distraction. Then, acting like his hand accidentally slipped, Yuichi suddenly pushes Maria off the edge of the cliff. Meanwhile, Tenji reaches his breaking point. He's about to press the give up button, but then remembers that even if he escapes the pain now, he'll only return to his empty life. Choosing instead of trusting Yuichi, he decides to bet everything on him. He feels sorry he never got the chance to apologize to the others, but at least he didn't betray anyone else this time. Just then, he feels water touch his lips. Opening his eyes, he sees Yuichi giving him water. As Tenji eats and drinks, Yuichi explains that if he had brought food earlier, the others would have been able to follow him to the hiding spot. However, Tenji tells Yuichi that he should have explained all of that on the first day, so he wouldn't have had to suffer so much. But Yuichi replies that he needed to test Tenji to see if he would press the give up button or not. If he didn't, that would be the moment Yuichi could start trusting him again. He adds that this doesn't mean he suddenly distrusts Shiho, but once the game is over, they'll figure out the truth together. Afterward, Hyakutaru managed to save Maria from the fall, and Chisato wanted to continue after Yuichi, but Hyakutaru tells him he needs his help to pull Maria up. Chisato says that Maria won't really get hurt from the fall, but Hyakutaru yells at him, angry that he's willing to let a girl get injured without helping. His reaction forces Chisato to go assist her. Maria, though a little shaken, remembers Yuichi telling her earlier that he would use her as a distraction, but she hadn't expected it to go this far. However, Yuichi reveals to Tenji how he manipulated Maria, knowing that slowing one of them down would affect both. He describes how he carefully studied the personalities and connections within Group K. Sometimes he leaked small bits of information to make them talk, while other times he deliberately provoked them. Over time, he identified Hyakutaru, who initially seemed like an old man from Fast and Furious movie but turned out to be more caring than the rest, haunted by regrets from his past. Turns out, Hyakutaru is also naive and unusually freaky toward girls, which is exactly why Yuichi targeted him. He was searching for the most compassionate person in Group K. Meanwhile, Chisato, the other guy, constantly watches Hyakutaru and reacts strongly to everything he says or does. Over the past 3 days, Yuichi says he's been setting up all kinds of traps, and the first one is about to activate soon. Meanwhile, Maria grabs Chisato's arm and thanks him for saving her, surprising both Chisato and Hyakutaru. Back at the food camp, Yuichi returns while Hyakutaru and Chisato are in the middle of an argument. Frustrated, Hyakutaru turns to Manabu and declares that he's switching to Group C. Afterward, Tenji asks Yuichi how he plans to break apart the bonds within Group K. Yuichi explains that once Manabu confirmed the third member was a girl, he decided to use her as a honey trap. Later, Maria thanks Chisato again for saving her life, but he tells her she should really be thanking Hyakutaru. However, when she looks at Hyakutaru, she says she hates him, accusing him of staring at her plot when she was undressing. Hyakutaru quickly tries to explain it was an accident and insists she was in her plot, accidentally confirming that he did see her. However, Hyakutaru claims he doesn't recall the event, but as Maria keeps asking, he admits he remembers it clearly and says it's stuck in his mind. Maria smiles, revealing she lied and thank him for saving her. Meanwhile, Chisato imagines what could have happened if he hadn't stepped in and calls Yuichi horrible. The three decide to return to the food station, but Maria feels pain in her leg. Seeing that, Hyakutaru offers to carry her on his back and she agrees, telling him that he is a really kind person and regrets that she ended up in Group C. Back at the food station, Hyakutaru and Chisato explain everything to Kei and Banri. But Kei figures out that if Yuichi got food, the game could drag on even longer. When Yuichi comes back, he starts bossing Maria around, claiming she's his. Hyakutaru gets mad and tries to defend her, but Maria stops him, saying that's exactly what Yuichi wants. Furious, Yuichi yanks Maria's hair for interfering. Kei points out to Manabu that this is violence, and Manabu agrees, but explains it's only against his own teammate, since the rules only ban violence against opponents. Yuichi keeps taunting them, saying he can treat Maria however he wants without breaking any rules. Hyakutaru proposes that Maria switches to their team, but Chisato stops him, sensing that something isn't right. Since Chisato has experience dealing with women, he suspects Maria might be pretending, playing along with Yuichi's game. The two start arguing, nearly coming to blows. But Kei steps in and reminds them that only their captain can decide whether Maria can join the team or not. Yuichi mocks them, calling them weak for hesitating over protecting a girl. This sets off Hayakutaru again, and he insists on being the one to speak to their captain. Kei agrees but suggests they both go together, since it would be more convincing that way. However, Yuichi figures that since Juzu hasn't stepped in to settle their fights, the tension between Chisato and Hayakutaru has only gotten worse. He's pretty sure Juzu would let Maria join their team, but based on their plan, Maria will refuse, claiming Yuichi is blackmailing her. That's when Hayakutaru will snap and throw a punch at Yuichi. Even if his own teammates stop him, it'll still make things messier between them. In the end, Yuichi plans to manipulate Hayakutaru into betraying his team, and once he does, victory is pretty much guaranteed. After all, Yuichi already has a few tricks to force him to reveal where their captain is hiding. Sometime later, Kei and Hayakutaru return. Hayakutaru regretfully informs Maria that Juzu refused to let her switch teams, but mentions there's still one last way to protect her. But Chisato instantly figures out what he means and desperately tries to talk him out of it, but Hayakutaru ignores him. Instead, he marches straight to Manabu and declares he wants to join Group C. Yuichi instantly agrees, and Manabu officially announces the transfer. Hayakutaru makes it clear he still intends to fight for Group K's victory, even if it means taking on twice the penalty if they win. Hayakutaru suddenly swings a punch at Yuichi, but Yuichi dodges effortlessly and slams him down. He warns Hayakutaru that violence won't be tolerated in either group and threatens to restrain him if necessary. However, Yuichi calls Tenji and tells him that he successfully got one of Group K's members to join their side, and now all that's left is to make him reveal where Juzu is hiding. Meanwhile, Hayakutaru apologizes to Maria, saying he won't be able to protect her anymore. Maria, though, is grateful he tried, but she's clearly worried. However, Hayakutaru is taken aback by Maria's words and wishes he could tell her where their captain is, but in reality, he has no idea. Meanwhile, Yuichi, who has been secretly listening in on their conversation, is shocked by Hayakutaru's admission. Elsewhere, Juzu tells Kei that Hayakutaru switched sides, just as he had suggested. Kei reassures him that it's fine and part of the plan, but also reminds Juzu to speak politely to Hayakutaru when they're alone. But Ryuko watches with satisfaction as she sees the surprise on Yuichi's face. Meanwhile, with Kei now exposed as the genius in her group, she remarks that a true genius isn't just someone with skills or intelligence, but someone who controls and manipulates everything from shadows. However, Yuichi asks Hayakutaru why he didn't see their captain, and Hayakutaru explains that on the way, Kei got a call telling them to return to the food station because Group C was up to something. With no choice, Kei called their captain instead of visiting him. Yuichi realizes Kei is the true leader and calls him. Kei confirms he figured it out. Yuichi admits he underestimated them and didn't realize Kei was controlling everything. Kei, however, believes they secured their win when they got Hayakutaru, their time bomb. Kei tells Yuichi that while he isn't as smart as him, he should understand what he means. Yuichi, shocked, tells Maria that they're going to lose. Juzu notices Kei looks pleased, and Kei admits that thanks to Yuichi, he wasn't bored the past few days. Juzu asks if they're really going to win, and Kei explains there are two key factors: Hayakutaru switching sides but not intending to betray them, and the use of violence by a player against an opponent. With these two, victory is inevitable. Kei then decides to find Tenji for a definitive win. Tsukino asks Ryuko about Kei's backstory, and Ryuko explains that Kei is a genius who gets bored with everything quickly. She believes he joined the Tomodachi game just to pass the time. Tsukino then wonders why Juzu obeys him, and Ryuko guesses that Kei must have discovered Juzu's weak point. Yuichi starts to panic, and Maria wonders what's going on. Yuichi explains that if Hayakutaru attacks anyone from Group K, they'll lose right away because of the violence rule. He tied up Hayakutaru, hoping they'd win quickly, but since that hasn't happened, Hayakutaru is now a ticking time bomb. Yuichi has to watch him constantly, so they can't move. Yuichi thinks about hiding Hayakutaru, but Chisato and Banri show up, saying he's too late. The next morning, Maria leaves, feeling bored and not noticing Kei, who quietly says he hoped to be alone with her. Kei is sure Maria is from the management, which surprises her because she didn't expect him to figure it out. He explains that they get food rations based on their group size. In addition, Group C only has 2 people, so they only got water. But when Maria showed up, she didn't seem hungry at all, and that makes her different from the other players, and it's only logical that she's from the management. Kei says he could ask her about her old team, but he thinks it's pointless. However, Maria agrees that betraying Yuichi seems pointless and asks Kei what he wants. But Kei tells her he wants her to betray Yuichi, as he believes Group K is sure to win, and as a player, it would be odd for her not to betray him. Maria reflects on how she tried to act cute and innocent and wonders if betraying Yuichi would change her character. Kei replies that he sees her as someone who values fun over reason, which surprises Maria, as she didn't expect him to figure her out. Kei promises she'll have more fun with him and says he can make the sadistic Yuichi fall apart into a weak failure. Maria quietly calls Yuichi, checking if anyone's nearby. He confirms they're being watched but not closely. She asks if he'll reveal Tenji's location, since she's alone now and could sneak him food. Yuichi spots Kei regrouping with Chisato and Banri. If they stall long enough, Maria believes he might find a way. After a pause, Yuichi relents and tells her. Maria hurries back, approaching Kei with a look that instantly makes him realize she's betrayed them. Yuichi collapses to his knees, roaring in frustration. Kei's certain Yuichi gave the real location. With no way to undo the damage, he urges the group to start searching immediately. Nightfall's approaching. Later, Kei calls Tenji and he tells him that Yuichi is terrible and would let Tenji die if it meant winning. Kei says Yuichi is planning something awful, and that Tenji should stop trusting him. But Tenji replies that he doesn't know anything. But Kei says he couldn't hear him and tells him to say it louder. However, Tenji gets mad and shouts for him to shut up, saying again that he doesn't know anything and that he's putting his trust in Yuichi. Kei says he heard that clearly, then suddenly appears in front of Tenji, saying he's found him. Manabu announces the game is over and that everyone, including the hider, should go to the food station. Tenji is shocked they lost, but Kei says they picked the wrong enemy. He's a genius. Afterward, the geezer stands over Yuichi after landing a punch and Manabu announces the winner of the third game. Friendly hide and seek is Group C. Hearing that, Kei gets shocked, saying they found the enemy hider first. But Manabu confirms but adds that it's not the only way to win. Kei turns and sees Juzu apologizing to everyone for pressing the give up button. A little earlier, Yuichi is surprised by how things turned out. He asks Hayakutaru if everyone has left, and when he says yes, Yuichi snaps out of his sadness and wants to keep going. He says that once Hayakutaru switched teams, Group C's win was guaranteed. But Yuichi says he didn't want it to end like this. He calls Juzu and tells him to press the give up button. Juzu refuses, but Yuichi then says he'll punch Hayakutaru until Juzu does it and starts hitting him. Juzu thinks Yuichi is bluffing and wonders why Hayakutaru isn't making any noise, and Yuichi is also surprised, not expecting Hayakutaru to be this tough. He hands the phone to Hayakutaru, who struggles to talk but says Juzu is right, Yuichi is bluffing. But the shake in his voice makes Juzu start to believe he really is getting hit. Ryako, watching Yuichi punch Hayakutaru, thinks he's not just a monster, he's a devil. However, Juzu tells Hayakutaru to hang in there because Kei will find the hider soon. But Yuichi then says he's going to break something that can't be fixed. Yuichi is aware they are a basketball team and that Hayakutaru practiced hard to improve his shots after missing one and accidentally injuring Juzu. Yuichi plans to break Hayakutaru's finger, saying even after it heals, it won't work the same way and will lose its accuracy. He gives Juzu 10 seconds and stuffs Hayakutaru's mouth to stop him from biting his tongue. When the time passes, Yuichi snaps his finger. Juzu hears the sound and recognizes it from his own injury, believes it's real and apologizes to Hayakutaru. Yuichi then says he will continue breaking the rest of his fingers. Juzu calls Yuichi a scum, but Yuichi fires back, saying the real scum is Juzu because he's the reason Group K is stuck in the Tomodachi game. His debt started everything. Later, after the game, Yuichi explains that nobody knew about the debt and they avoided discussing it. At first, he thought Kei owed the money and Juzu was covering for him. But when he sees Kei ordering Juzu around, he realizes the truth. Juzu is the one in debt. Juzu admits his family's business was drowning in debt, and things got so bad he was about to drop out of school and start working. However, Juzu wanted to play one final tournament with the team before quitting. Kei offered to help pay off his debt, but only if Juzu obeyed his every command. Overcome with guilt, Juzu apologizes, admitting everything is his fault, yet he still can't forgive Yuichi and keeps punching him. Hayakutaru suddenly steps in to stop him, confusing Juzu since he thought Yuichi had broken Hayakutaru's finger. To his shock, Hayakutaru shows that his fingers are perfectly fine. Juzu is stunned. He could have sworn he heard a bone snap. Then it hits him. He grabs Yuichi's hand and sees the truth. Yuichi broke his own finger instead. But Juzu wonders why Hayakutaru didn't tell him, and Hayakutaru reveals that Yuichi promised to let Juzu hit him as much as he hit Hayakutaru. Juzu states they indeed lost. Afterward, Kei refuses to accept the outcome, insisting that Juzu was the one who truly lost. His plan was flawless, but the others held him back. Suddenly, Banri grabs Kei and starts spanking him, leaving Kei shocked and demanding to know why his big brother is doing this. Banri explains that while they aren't related, they grew up together, and he sees himself as Kei's older brother. He tells Kei to let it go. His strategy failed because he didn't plan for this scenario, so he lost fair and square. But Banri adds that Juzu made the right choice by pressing the button. If he had abandoned Hyakutaru just to win, he would have lost the trust and respect of everyone. Juzu declares that he'll try to take on all their debt himself, hoping the four of them won't go their separate ways. Meanwhile, Maria questions whether Yuichi had figured out her true identity. Yuichi confirms he knew she was working for the game's management all along. She pretended to be weak and unsure yet carried out his toughest orders too flawlessly. Realizing she was a spy, he pushed her off the cliff without hesitation. His shocked reaction when she betrayed him was just an act, meant to trick the others into thinking they'd won and could abandon him. However, Yuichi and Tenji are temporarily released until the fourth game begins. When they return to school, they find Yutori desperately trying to scrub away hateful messages calling them thieves and even wishing death upon them. Overwhelmed, Yutori breaks down in tears and shares that Shiho and Makoto have vanished. She explains that a week earlier, Manabu had told Yutori, Shiho, and Makoto they could go home since they weren't part of the third game, but with strict orders not to discuss the game or try to escape. Then, Manabu dropped a bombshell. Group C's total debt had ballooned to 10.8 million yen. Shiho, alarmed, warned the others not to trust Manabu, fearing his words could poison their friendship. Manabu tells them they can choose whether to believe him or not, but points out that Yuichi and Tenji are already aware of the full debt amount. Tenji suspects Shiho fled because her secret got exposed. Though Yutori doesn't understand what secret he's referring to, only that there must be a reason for her disappearance. Yutori explains what happened after they returned to school. Vice President Hanamiya confronted Shiho, accusing her of stealing the class trip funds, while other classes deposited the money in accounts. Their teacher revealed Shiho had insisted on collecting it all in cash. When Makoto tries to defend her, Shiho stops him, admitting the truth is tied to the Tomodachi game. Hanamiya then accuses Makoto of being involved too, but he angrily denies it, saying 2 million yen means nothing to someone as wealthy as him. However, Yuichi figures something must have gone terribly wrong after that, but Yutori nods, explaining that 2 days later, her father got arrested when the police discovered everything exposed during the Tomodachi game. Putting the pieces together, Yuichi realizes Makoto must have told his father about the game while trying to borrow the 2 million yen. The next day, Makoto returned empty-handed, admitting he couldn't get the money. That's when the bullying started, and Shiho tried defending him at first, but soon she disappeared too. Yuichi and the others walk to Makoto's house, and once they get there, they find out that Makoto's father has been murdered. Not long after, the police come and lead Makoto outside, and he's covered in blood. Makoto looks like he's trying to tell Yuichi something, but before he can say anything, Shiho's father steps in and stops him from speaking. This makes Tenji furious, and he's about to react, but Yuichi quickly holds him back. Yuichi and Tenji stand around, unsure of what to do next. But Yutori comes over and asks them what's going on, and it seems like the three of them are starting to trust each other again. But Yuichi says he's done with Yutori because after the second game, she didn't talk to him at all and just stared at him like he was some kind of monster. Then, Yutori explains that she got scared when people started calling him a murderer, but she was waiting to learn the truth first. Yuichi shouts at her, saying she's just doing whatever people tell her to do and that he can't stand people like that. He adds that she's completely useless in the Tomodachi game and is nothing but a burden to them. Yutori admits that she knows she's not helpful, which is why she's always done whatever they ask, just so she wouldn't get in their way. But Yuichi tells her again that she's a burden now and nothing more than a stranger to them. Later, Tenji starts to question if pushing Yutori away was really the right thing to do. But Yuichi explains that since people's lives are at stake now, it's better to keep Yutori out of it, and that they can take on their debt themselves if needed. Just then, Tenji gets a call from Manabu and he tells him that they're about to start a special version of the Tomodachi game. He also figures out that Yuichi is there too and mocks him by asking if threats really don't work on him. Right after that, he sends them a photo of Yutori all tied up and tells them the rules are very simple, either they come or they don't. If they show up, they'll suffer a lot, but if they don't, then Yutori is the one who will suffer instead. However, Yuichi is playing the weak win game and Manabu explains that if two people feel the same pain, the weak one will scream while the strong one stays quiet. People pity the weak one and go easy on them, so being weak becomes an advantage. He tells Yuichi to come alone to a certain place. If he brings anyone, he'll never see Yutori again. Yuichi snaps back, warning that if they hurt Yutori, he'll kill them. Later, Yuichi shows up at the location he was told to go to, and when he gets there, he sees a group of guys standing around, along with someone wearing a Manabu mask. The masked man removes his mask and shows off his ugly-looking face and introduces himself as Kuroki. He says he'll be the host for this special version of the Tomodachi game. Seeing that, Kuroki offers to explain the rules of the weak win game again, but Yuichi cuts him off and demands that he let Yutori go. Kuroki refuses, then walks over and slices open Yutori's shirt, saying he knows something about Yuichi that could expose a big secret. This catches Yuichi off guard, realizing Kuroki might actually know something serious about him. Kuroki goes on to explain the game. Yuichi will have to go through 3 rounds of physical pain. If he can endure it all without giving in, both he and Yutori will be set free. But because this is the Tomodachi game, there's a twist. Yuichi doesn't have to suffer if he doesn't want to. If he chooses, Yutori can take the pain in his place. Hiroki reveals another rule. Yutori will be the one who decides who takes the pain in each round. If she chooses to take it herself, the pain will be lighter than what Yuichi would get. But Yuichi is not allowed to speak during her decision, or else both of them will be punished. Hiroki then announces the start of the first round. In this one, the punishment is getting punched by their strongest guy, known as Goriki-kun. If Yutori picks herself, she'll only be hit once, but if she picks Yuichi, he'll get hit 3 times. She has 5 seconds to choose, and if she doesn't decide in time, Yuichi will be chosen by default. As the countdown starts, Yutori isn't sure what to do, but Yuichi stomps the ground and gives her a sign to not choose herself. However, Hiroki thinks he should have said Yuichi can't move, but he's fine with it anyway. Goriki then hits Yuichi 3 times. Yuichi, in his head, thinks the punches aren't as strong as Juzu's from Group K. Yutori says sorry and says she'll go next, and then Hiroki takes her hand and helps her onto a table. He says the next round is nail pulling. He tells her she can pick Yuichi, but that means 3 of his nails will be taken. As Hiroki starts pulling Yutori's nail, she cries out in pain, unsure of what to do. Yuichi suddenly stands up and puts his arm on the table. Hiroki wonders if Yuichi is angry, but Yuichi tells him to shut up and just do it. But Yuichi looks at the others and asks why Hiroki is their leader. He wonders if there's anything good about him. However, Hiroki just looks like a freaky sadist with a snake-like face. Hiroki, hearing this, thinks Yuichi doesn't understand. Being the strongest doesn't mean you're the leader. Hiroki explains that he's the leader because he's the smartest one, and he adds that he has guts and no matter what happens, nothing will shake him. The most important thing, though, is that he will never betray his friends. Yuichi thinks about it, realizing that being smart, having guts, and not betraying his friends are what make Hiroki the leader. Hiroki wants to keep playing with a twist. If Yutori picks herself, she'll dance commando. If Yuichi is chosen, he'll stab his hand 3 times, and then Hiroki gives them a minute to talk. Yutori tells Yuichi to decide, but he asks her how she feels. She knows she has to do it but can't choose, so she'll follow Yuichi's decision. Yuichi says he'll do it, but Hiroki laughs and mocks Yutori, saying she's useless and the weakest. Then Hiroki grabs Yuichi's hand and stabs it 3 times, getting excited as Yuichi screams. Hiroki says the game is over and they're free to leave, though he doubts they'll want to leave together. Yuichi says he's really angry this time, but his anger is at Hiroki, not Yutori. He tells her he's not mad at her and explains that kidnappers often say they'll hurt someone if you don't do what they want, then twist things so the person who refuses feels guilty. But the real bad guys are the kidnappers, and people like Yutori are just victims who shouldn't blame themselves. Yuichi apologizes, saying it's his fault she was targeted. But Yutori starts crying and hugs him, saying she doesn't know what kind of person he was before, but he's been kind to her now, so she'll trust him. After bandaging Yuichi's hand, he tells Yutori she can leave, but he's staying to finish something. Though it might be scary, Yutori chooses to stay. Yuichi asks Hiroki to play a game, and Hiroki asks what he gets, and Yuichi offers 10 million yen. Everyone gets excited. Hiroki doubts he has that much, but Yuichi says if Hiroki knows his past, he should know he has way more. Hiroki agrees and asks about the game. Yuichi says it's rock, paper, scissors. If Hiroki wins, he gets the money, and if he loses, Yuichi cuts his fingers. Afterward, Yuichi explains the rules, saying if Hiroki picks paper and loses, he'll cut all 5 fingers. In addition, if he picks scissors and loses, he'll cut off 2, and if he picks rock and loses, he cuts nothing, making it the safe choice. But Yuichi calls it rock, paper, fingers and adds that since his hand is bandaged, he can only throw rock or paper, giving Hiroki an edge. Yuichi starts counting down, but Hiroki stops him, saying he never agreed. However, Yuichi mocks him, asking if he's scared even with an advantage. Then Yuichi raises the stakes. If Hiroki wins, everyone there will get 1 million yen. It turns out, Hiroki thinks Yuichi expects him to throw scissors, planning to tie with paper. But he's not dumb. He won't risk scissors since it could lose. Yuichi then asks if Hiroki planned to use paper, which catches him off guard. But Hiroki doesn't see the issue, but Yuichi says it just proves how pathetic he is. Nonetheless, Hiroki wonders if Yuichi is trying to mess with him, but says it won't work. Yuichi can only throw paper anyway. Afterward, Yuichi says he won't be using paper and he starts the countdown, but Hiroki tries to stay calm, thinking Yuichi can only throw rock, so he still throws paper. But Yuichi uses his left hand and throws scissors. Hiroki gets angry, saying that wasn't part of the deal, and Yuichi reminds him he said he wouldn't throw paper and that he can only use rock or paper with his right hand. He never said he couldn't use his left. Furious, Kuroki orders his men to attack Yuichi. They hesitate, asking about the game, but Kuroki yells that it doesn't count and tells them to just beat him. At that moment, Tsukino and the real Tomodachi game staff enter and start restraining everyone. Kuroki tries to attack Tsukino, but she knocks him out with one kick. However, Yuichi notes Tenji's timing was perfect, but Tenji says they actually arrived a bit earlier but weren't allowed to come in yet. Tsukino faces Kuroki, asking if he's the fake leader pretending to run the Tomodachi game. But Tenji explains he followed Yuichi's gut feeling and contacted the real group. Even so, Yuichi reminds Kuroki he lost and owes him 5 fingers, but Tsukino steps on Kuroki's hand, telling Yuichi to hurry. However, Yuichi wonders which finger to start with and Kuroki calls for help from his men. As Yuichi gets excited, Kuroki begs him to stop, but Yuichi says he can, but only if one of Kuroki's friends takes his place, though he'll only cut one of their fingers. Kuroki, relieved, asks if any of his men will take the deal, since it's just 1 finger instead of 5. As no one reacts, Kuroki gets angry that they are not obeying his orders and states that his fingers are worth more than one of their fingers. But Tsukino stops Kuroki and tells him the game is over as Yuichi had passed out. Afterward, Kuroki gets into the car with Tsukino, still mad at Yuichi for tricking him with such a childish move. However, Tsukino tells him he still doesn't get it and she asks him which hand is strongest in rock, paper, scissors. But Kuroki thinks paper can't lose and scissors still has a chance. But Tsukino says Yuichi claimed he could only use rock or paper. But that was part of the plan, since he always meant to use scissors. She then asks how Yuichi could make sure he wouldn't lose or tie. However, Kuroki realizes it's by making him think rock wasn't an option and Tsukino nods. Kuroki gets a relief as he got out without losing his fingers or anything else, and Tsukino sighs and calls him a complete idiot, but she explains that the game exposed 3 things about him proving he has no brain. When she spoke to his men about what to do with Kuroki, they said he meant nothing to them now and they could handle him however they wanted. With just 1 round of rock, paper, scissors, Yuichi completely ruined Kuroki's ties with his own crew. Tenji and Yutori rush to wake Yuichi up and Ryuko walks over and seeing his badly injured hand is shocked he's still conscious after losing so much blood. She quickly calls for emergency transport to save him, but Tenji looks surprised. And Ryuko calmly says they're important to the organization and they can't let them die for no reason. Tenji doesn't care about that. As long as Yuichi gets help, that's all that matters to him. He plans to stay with Yuichi the whole time, but before he can, Maria cuts in and asks if maybe they should focus on someone else who needs them more right now. She reveals it's Makoto, the murderer, and if they join the next game, they might still save him. But taking his place adds a 500 million yen debt, and Maria explains Makoto got the same debt after his dad died and wonders if Tenji and Yutori will choose money or friendship. But Yuichi wakes up and tells Tenji to say they need the truth before leaving the game. He says friends matter more than money, then pass out. However, Yutori says she trusts Yuichi and if he trusts Tenji, she'll go too. Afterward, Tenji and Yutori enter a courtroom where Judge Manabu appears and announces the 4th game, which is known as Friendship Guilt Court. How far will Yuichi go to uncover the truth behind the Tomodachi game? Comment betrayal if you're ready for the next twisted round. Make sure to subscribe channel for more content.